Standing in the pouring rain outside the glass doors of Porter Marketing Solutions, I clutched a soggy cardboard box containing 8 years of my professional life. The security guards watched me through the lobby windows, making sure I didn't try to return. 3 weeks ago, I was Bud Richardson, vice president and co-founder of this thriving marketing consultancy. Today, I'm a man banned from entering his own building because a 22-year-old intern named Jessica convinced my wife Sarah that I was embezzling company funds and having an affair with our biggest client. The betrayal cuts deeper than losing the business we built from nothing in our garage. Let me take you back to where this nightmare began. 3 months before that rainy evening, Sarah burst into our home office with excitement radiating from every pore. She'd just finished interviewing summer interns and found someone extraordinary. "But you have to meet Jessica Evans," Sarah announced, dropping her purse on our kitchen counter. "She's a senior at Northwestern studying business and communications. This girl has ideas that could revolutionize how we approach client engagement." I looked up from the quarterly report spread across our dining table. "What makes her so special?" She analyzed our Porter Industries campaign during her interview and suggested 3 improvements that honestly never occurred to me. Plus, she has this infectious energy that reminds me of us when we started this company. The following Monday, Jessica arrived wearing a navy blazer and carrying herself with the confidence of someone much older. Her handshake was firm, her eye contact direct, and her enthusiasm genuine. During our introduction meeting, she demonstrated an impressive understanding of current marketing trends and social media analytics. "I've been following your company's growth since my freshman year," Jessica explained, sitting across from Sarah and me in our conference room. "The way you transformed struggling businesses into success stories inspired me to switch my major from pre-law to marketing." Sarah beamed with pride. "What drew you to our specific approach?" "Your focus on authentic storytelling rather than hard selling. Too many agencies push products, but you help companies find their voice and connect with customers on an emotional level." I had to admit, Jessica impressed me. Her insights were sharp, her questions thoughtful, and her work ethic immediately apparent. Within her first week, she'd reorganized our client filing system, updated our social media scheduling software, and volunteered to assist with evening client calls. "She stays until 7 every night without being asked," Sarah mentioned during dinner. "Remember when we had that kind of drive?" What I initially interpreted as dedication, I now recognize as strategic positioning. Jessica wasn't just learning our business processes. She was mapping our vulnerabilities, studying our relationship dynamics, and identifying pressure points she could exploit. The first red flag appeared during her second week. I found Jessica in Sarah's office after hours going through client contracts under the guise of better understanding our service agreements. When I asked why she needed access to confidential financial information, she smiled sweetly and explained she was helping Sarah prepare for the quarterly board meeting. "I want to be as useful as possible," Jessica said. "Sarah mentioned you handle most of the client relationship management, so I thought learning about contract structures would help me support those efforts better." Her explanation seemed reasonable, but something felt off. Interns typically focused on specific projects, not comprehensive business analysis. However, Sarah praised Jessica's initiative, so I pushed aside my concerns. The manipulation began subtly. During team meetings, Jessica would ask seemingly innocent questions that planted seeds of doubt. "Does Bud always handle client dinners alone?" she inquired during a strategy session. "I'm curious about our protocols for maintaining professional boundaries." Sarah laughed it off initially. "Bud's been managing client relationships for years. He knows how to keep things professional." "Of course," Jessica agreed quickly. "I'm just thinking from a liability perspective. Some companies require 2 employees at client meetings to avoid any potential misunderstandings." These conversations continued for weeks. Jessica would raise hypothetical scenarios about inappropriate client relationships, workplace harassment policies, and financial accountability measures. Each discussion was framed as learning opportunities or process improvement suggestions. Meanwhile, Jessica cultivated an intimate friendship with Sarah. They began having lunch together daily, staying late to discuss business strategies and texting about work-related topics during weekends. Jessica positioned herself as Sarah's protege and confidant, someone who understood the challenges of being a successful woman in a competitive industry. "Jessica reminds me so much of myself at her age," Sarah told me one evening. "She's hungry, ambitious, and not afraid to ask tough questions about how we operate." The setup intensified when Jessica volunteered to digitize our client files and update our customer relationship management system. This gave her access to detailed records of every client interaction, including my business dinners and meetings with Amanda Porter, our largest account. Amanda Porter owned a chain of boutique fitness studios across the Midwest and represented nearly 30% of our annual revenue. Managing her account required frequent meetings, strategy sessions, and collaborative planning discussions. These professional interactions often took place over lunch or dinner, standard practice in relationship-based business development. Jessica photographed these innocent restaurant meetings from across parking lots and through windows. She manipulated timestamps on the images using photo editing software, creating a timeline that suggested romantic rendezvous rather than business meetings. More insidiously, she began documenting my communication patterns with Amanda, looking for phrases or interactions she could recontextualize as inappropriate. During my business trip to Atlanta for a marketing conference, Jessica implemented the final phase of her plan. She presented Sarah with a carefully curated collection of evidence that painted a picture of my supposed infidelity and financial misconduct. The photographs showed me sharing meals and conversations with Amanda, but Jessica had cropped out business documents and removed contextual details that would have revealed their professional nature. She included screenshots of text messages between Amanda and me discussing campaign strategies, highlighting phrases like "looking forward to seeing you" and "we work so well together," that could be interpreted romantically when stripped of their business context. "I didn't want to bring this to your attention," Jessica told Sarah, her voice trembling with manufactured emotion. "But as someone who cares about you both personally and professionally, I couldn't stay silent when I discovered these concerning patterns." Sarah's world crumbled as she examined the fabricated evidence. The woman she trusted implicitly was presenting detailed documentation of her husband's alleged betrayal. Jessica's tears appeared genuine, her concern seemingly authentic, and her reluctance to share bad news completely convincing. "I've been struggling with whether to tell you," Jessica continued. "I know how much you love Bud, and I hoped there was an innocent explanation. But the pattern is too consistent to ignore." When I returned from Atlanta, excited to share news about potential new clients and industry connections, I walked into an ambush that would destroy everything I'd spent 8 years building. The Atlanta conference had been incredibly productive. I'd connected with 3 potential clients, learned about emerging marketing technologies, and gathered intelligence about our competitors' strategies. Flying home. Thursday evening, I felt optimistic about our company's future and eager to share my discoveries with Sarah. Walking through our front door, I immediately sensed something was wrong. Sarah sat at the kitchen table with her laptop open, papers scattered around her, and an expression I'd never seen before. Her jaw was set, her eyes cold, and her entire posture radiated hostility. "How was your trip?" she asked without looking up from her screen. "Really productive, actually. I met with several potential clients and learned about some new software that could streamline our campaign management process." I set down my suitcase and approached the table. "What are you working on so late, Sebidi?" "Reviewing some interesting financial discrepancies Jessica discovered while updating our accounting system." My stomach dropped. "What kind of discrepancies?" Sarah finally looked at me, and the betrayal in her eyes hit like a physical blow. 3 months of suspicious transactions, Bud. Cash withdrawals that don't match any documented business expenses. Restaurant charges that seem excessive for standard client meetings. Hotel receipts from cities where we don't have any scheduled business. "Sarah, what are you talking about? Every expense I submit goes through our normal approval process. You've seen all my receipts and client meeting reports." She turned her laptop screen toward me, displaying a spreadsheet that Jessica had created. The document showed legitimate business expenses reclassified with misleading descriptions. My dinner with Amanda at Romano's Italian restaurant to discuss her Chicago expansion plans was listed as personal dining, no business justification. The hotel charge from my Denver client visit was labeled unauthorized travel, personal use. This is completely wrong, I protested, pointing at the screen. That Romano's dinner was when Amanda decided to add 3 new locations to her account. The Denver trip was for the Morrison Industries project you approved last month. These descriptions don't match what actually happened. Then explain these. Sarah opened a folder containing the photographs Jessica had taken. My heart sank as I saw myself with Amanda at various restaurants and coffee shops. But the images were edited and cropped to remove any indication of their business nature. Our marketing materials, laptops, and client documents had been digitally erased from every photo. Sarah, these are all legitimate client meetings. Amanda and I were working on campaign strategies, reviewing performance metrics, discussing budget allocations. This is how account management works, and you know it. Really? Then why does she look so comfortable? Why are you sitting so close together? Why do you both look like you're enjoying yourselves so much? I stared at the photographs, trying to understand how innocent business interactions could appear so damaging when stripped of context. Because we have a good working relationship. Amanda's our biggest client, and maintaining positive rapport is essential for keeping her business. And this, Sarah handed me a printed conversation that supposedly came from my phone. The text exchange showed me arranging to meet Amanda for drinks, discussing how much I missed her company, and making plans for a weekend getaway. Every word was fabricated, but the formatting looked authentic, and the phone number matched Amanda's business contact information. I've never sent these messages, I said, my voice rising with desperation. Sarah, this entire conversation is fake. Check my actual phone if you want to see what I really texted Amanda. I already did. Funny thing about deleted messages, bud. They're gone from your phone, but not from the phone records Jessica helped me request from our business account. My blood ran cold as I realized the depth of Jessica's manipulation. She hadn't just created false evidence, she'd anticipated my denials and prepared responses to counter every logical explanation I might offer. Where is Jessica now? I asked. Home, probably crying because she had to be the one to tell me my husband has been cheating on me with our biggest client while stealing money from our company. Sarah, listen to yourself. Jessica has been here for 2 months. We've been married for 8 years and business partners for 6. You're going to believe some intern over your own husband. I'm believing the evidence, bud. Documents don't lie, photographs don't lie, financial records don't lie. But people do lie, especially people like Jessica who prey on trust and manipulate emotions for personal gain. Standing in my own kitchen accused of crimes I didn't commit by the woman I loved most, I felt utterly helpless against the web of deception that had been carefully constructed during my absence. You need to leave, Sarah said, closing her laptop with finality. Leave, Sarah, this is our home, our business, our life together. You can't just throw me out based on fake evidence from someone we barely know. I'm not throwing you out. I'm giving you space to think about what you've done and decide whether you want to try saving our marriage or continue destroying everything we built together. I haven't destroyed anything. I haven't cheated on you. I haven't stolen from our company. I haven't done any of the things Jessica is claiming. Then prove it. How can I prove a negative? How can I prove I didn't do things that never happened? How can I defend myself against evidence that's been fabricated and manipulated? Sarah's expression softened slightly, and for a moment I thought reason might prevail. Then her phone buzzed with a text message from Jessica expressing concern and offering emotional support during this difficult time. The spell of doubt was broken, and Sarah's anger returned with renewed intensity. Pack whatever you need for a few weeks, she said. Stay with Danny or find a hotel. When you're ready to be honest about what you've been doing, we can talk about whether there's any way to move forward. And the business, you're suspended from all company activities until we can conduct a full investigation. Jessica will help me review every client account and financial transaction from the past 6 months. The irony was crushing. The person who had orchestrated this entire deception would now be investigating her own crimes, while I was banished from the company I'd helped create. Jessica had positioned herself perfectly to control the narrative, destroy evidence of her manipulation, and solidify her influence over Sarah. I packed 2 suitcases with shaking hands, my mind racing through possible ways to expose Jessica's lies and restore Sarah's trust. Every plan seemed hopeless when I considered how thoroughly Jessica had prepared for this moment. She'd anticipated my defense's manufactured evidence to counter my explanations and positioned herself as Sarah's protector and advisor. Walking out the front door of my own home carrying belongings like a guilty party fleeing justice, I felt the full weight of Jessica's psychological warfare. She hadn't just stolen my marriage and business. She'd stolen my identity as a trustworthy partner and ethical professional. The rain that started falling as I loaded my car seemed appropriate for the darkest moment of my adult life. Everything I'd worked to build was crumbling, and the woman I loved believed I was the enemy while embracing the person actually destroying our lives. But Jessica had made one crucial mistake in her elaborate scheme. She assumed I would accept defeat and disappear quietly, allowing her to complete whatever plan she had for taking over our business and replacing me in Sarah's life. She was about to learn that destroying someone's life comes with consequences, and I wasn't going to let her get away with it. Danny's guest bedroom became my base of operations for the counterattack I was planning against Jessica's web of lies. My younger brother worked as a software engineer for a medical device company, and had always been the analytical problem solver in our family. When I showed up at his apartment Thursday night with my suitcases and a story that sounded like a paranoid fantasy, Danny listened without judgment and immediately offered his spare room. This Jessica person sounds like a professional con artist, Danny said after I'd explained the whole situation. Normal people don't fabricate this level of detailed evidence overnight. She's done this before. That's what I'm thinking, but I need proof. Sarah won't listen to theories or suspicions. She needs concrete evidence that Jessica is lying. Then we get concrete evidence. I know someone who can help. Danny's contact was Marcus Thompson, a private investigator who specialized in corporate fraud and background verification. Marcus had worked with Danny's company when they suspected an employee of stealing intellectual property, and his investigation had uncovered a sophisticated industrial espionage operation. Friday morning, Marcus met me at a coffee shop near Danny's apartment. He was a compact man in his 40s with graying hair and the kind of quiet intensity that suggested extensive law enforcement experience. Danny explained your situation, Marcus said, settling into the booth across from me. Before we start, I need to know what outcome you're hoping for. Do you want to save your marriage, expose this Jessica person, recover your business, or all of the above? I want the truth to come out. If Sarah still doesn't trust me after she knows what really happened, at least I'll have my integrity, and Jessica won't be able to hurt other people. Fair enough. Let's start with basic background verification on Jessica Evans. If she's running a con, there will be inconsistencies in her personal history that we can identify and document. Marcus began his investigation that afternoon while I tried to figure out how to survive professionally and personally. Sarah had frozen my access to our business accounts, suspended my company credit cards, and informed our clients that I was taking a temporary leave of absence for personal reasons. The isolation was devastating. For 8 years, my daily routine had revolved around client calls, strategy meetings, and collaborative planning sessions with Sarah. Suddenly, I had nowhere to go and nothing to do except wait for Marcus to uncover information that might vindicate me. Monday evening, Marcus called with preliminary findings that exceeded my worst fears about Jessica's deception. Bud, we need to meet. I found some things you need to see in person. We met at a diner near the highway, and Marcus spread a collection of documents across our table like a detective presenting evidence in a criminal case. Jessica Evans doesn't exist, Marcus began. At least not the person who's working at your company. The real Jessica Evans graduated from Northwestern last spring and is currently working for a non-profit in Seattle. Someone stole her identity and credentials to create a fake background. He showed me copies of transcripts, employment records, and social media profiles belonging to the actual Jessica Evans. The woman destroying my marriage was using a stolen identity so sophisticated that it had fooled Sarah's hiring process and background verification. So who is she really? Jennifer Walsh, originally from Indianapolis. She was expelled from Northwestern during her junior year for academic fraud, specifically submitting plagiarized work and falsifying research data. But that's just the beginning. Marcus opened another folder containing police reports and court documents from Illinois and Wisconsin. Jennifer has been charged with embezzlement in Cook County. She volunteered for a children's literacy nonprofit and stole nearly $30,000 by creating fake vendor accounts and submitting fraudulent expense reports. The pattern Marcus had uncovered was chilling in its consistency. Jennifer targeted small organizations and family businesses by positioning herself as a helpful volunteer or intern. She studied the internal dynamics, identified relationship vulnerabilities, and systematically destroyed partnerships while stealing money and resources. Her last confirmed victim was a restaurant owner in Chicago named Robert Chen, Marcus explained. Jennifer convinced his wife that Robert was having an affair with a female vendor. The marriage ended in divorce, and Jennifer somehow convinced the wife to hire her as the restaurant's manager. Within 6 months, she'd embezzled $40,000 and disappeared. How many other victims are there? At least 4 that I can confirm, probably more. Jennifer is part of what appears to be a loose network of con artists who share information about potential targets and successful manipulation techniques. Marcus showed me screenshots from underground forums where scammers discuss strategies for infiltrating businesses and destroying relationships. The technical sophistication was astounding, including tutorials for creating fake evidence, manipulating digital communications, and exploiting psychological vulnerabilities. The good news is that Jennifer's getting sloppy. Marcus continued. She's using the same tactics repeatedly, and law enforcement in multiple jurisdictions is building cases against her associates. The bad news is that she's probably planning to disappear soon, which means she needs to extract maximum value from your situation quickly. What kind of value? Money, obviously, but also positioning herself to take over your business relationships and client accounts. If she can convince Sarah to make her a permanent employee or business partner, she'll have access to everything you've built. The revelation that my marriage was being destroyed as part of a calculated criminal enterprise was simultaneously horrifying and oddly comforting. At least I wasn't losing my mind or imagining the manipulation tactics I'd sensed from the beginning. What do we need to prove Jennifer's guilt legally? More evidence than we currently have. The identity theft and background fraud are clear, but proving she manipulated the photos and financial records requires digital forensics. Plus, we need to establish her criminal intent and connect her to the larger fraud network. How long will that take? 2 to 3 weeks if we're lucky, longer if she's been careful about covering her digital tracks. During this conversation, my phone buzzed with a text from Sarah asking if I'd had time to reflect on my behavior and consider whether I wanted to work toward rebuilding trust in our relationship. The irony was devastating. While I was uncovering evidence of an elaborate criminal conspiracy against us, Sarah believed I was the one who needed to admit guilt and seek forgiveness. I wanted to call her immediately and explain everything Marcus had discovered, but without complete proof of Jennifer's deception, my claims would sound like desperate lies from a guilty person trying to shift blame. Sarah needed irrefutable evidence that would completely destroy Jennifer's credibility and expose the manipulation she'd fallen victim to. Marcus, I need you to find everything. Every crime Jennifer's committed, every lie she's told, every person she's hurt. I want enough evidence to ensure she never hurts another family like she's hurt mine. I'll do everything I can, but Bud, you need to prepare for the possibility that even complete vindication might not save your marriage. Sometimes the damage from this kind of psychological manipulation can't be repaired. I understood the risk, but I had to try. Sarah was more than my wife and business partner. She was my best friend and the person I'd planned to grow old with. If our relationship was going to end, it wouldn't be because some criminal destroyed it with lies and fake evidence. That night, sleeping in Danny's guest room, I made a decision that would define how I responded to this crisis. Instead of just defending myself against Jennifer's accusations, I was going to systematically expose her criminal network and make sure she faced justice for every life she'd destroyed. Jennifer had picked the wrong family to target. She was about to discover that some people fight back harder than she expected. 2 weeks into my exile, Marcus's investigation had gathered substantial evidence of Jennifer's criminal background, but we still needed proof connecting her directly to the fabricated evidence that destroyed my marriage. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source, Amanda Porter herself. Marcus suggested I contact Amanda to verify that our business meetings had been professional and document her perspective on Jennifer's claims. I was reluctant, initially fearing that Amanda might believe Sarah's accusations and terminate our business relationship entirely. Amanda, this is Bud Richardson from Porter Marketing Solutions. I know this is an unusual call, but I need to ask you about some concerning developments that might affect our business relationship. Bud, thank goodness you called. I've been getting the strangest communication supposedly from you over the past few weeks. Texts and emails that seem completely out of character and, frankly, quite inappropriate. My heart racing, I asked Amanda to describe the messages she'd received. Someone using your email address and phone number has been sending me romantic messages asking me out on dates and making comments about my appearance that made me very uncomfortable. I was planning to call Sarah tomorrow to discuss terminating our contract. The magnitude of Jennifer's scheme became clear. She wasn't just destroying my marriage. She was systematically eliminating the business relationships that supported our company's success. Amanda, I never sent those messages. Someone has been impersonating me as part of an elaborate fraud. I'm working with a private investigator to expose what's happening, and I'd like your permission to have our cybersecurity expert examine those communications. You're saying someone is pretending to be you? Yes, and they're targeting both my personal and professional relationships. The person responsible has been feeding my wife false evidence about an affair between us using photographs of our legitimate business meetings taken out of context. Amanda agreed to meet with Marcus and me that afternoon at her downtown office. She brought her laptop containing the fraudulent communications and introduced us to her cybersecurity consultant, a sharp woman named Kelly, who specialized in digital forensics for corporate clients. Kelly examined the fake messages with professional skepticism that quickly turned to excitement as she identified technical evidence of Jennifer's deception. These emails are spoofed, Kelly explained, pointing at metadata hidden in the message headers. Someone used software to make them appear to come from Bud's email address, but the actual source is a different server entirely. The text messages are even more interesting because they were sent using a voice-over internet protocol service that allows users to display any phone number they want. Can you trace them back to the real sender? I asked. Absolutely. The spoofing software leaves digital fingerprints that law enforcement can follow. Plus, whoever did this made several technical mistakes that make identification easier. Kelly's analysis revealed that all the fraudulent communications originated from IP addresses associated with Jennifer's apartment complex and Northwestern University computer labs. The timestamps corresponded perfectly with periods when Jennifer was working late at our office or staying overnight on campus for supposed study sessions. This is sophisticated enough to fool most people, but sloppy enough to prove in court, Kelly concluded. Whoever's responsible has technical skills but lacks the expertise to hide their tracks from professional forensic analysis. Amanda was furious when she understood the scope of Jennifer's manipulation. This person was trying to destroy your marriage and steal my business at the same time. What kind of criminal operation are we dealing with? Marcus explained Jennifer's pattern of targeting family businesses and the broader fraud network that supported her activities. Amanda listened with growing anger and determination to help expose the deception. What do you need from me to stop this person? Documented evidence of the fraudulent communication sworn statements about the nature of our actual business relationship and your permission to share our findings with law enforcement, I replied. You have all of that and anything else I can provide. No one should have their life destroyed by lies and manipulation. Kelly's technical analysis provided the breakthrough we needed to prove Jennifer's guilt, but Marcus warned that we needed additional evidence to build a comprehensive case. Jennifer was likely monitoring our company's communications and financial records, destroying evidence of her manipulation while preparing for her eventual disappearance. We need to catch her in the act of committing fraud, Marcus explained. Documentation of past crimes is important, but catching her actively stealing or manipulating evidence will make prosecution much easier. The opportunity came sooner than expected. Kelly had installed monitoring software on Amanda's systems to track any future fraudulent communications. 2 days later, the system detected someone attempting to access Amanda's email account using stolen credentials. She's trying to delete the fake messages she sent, Kelly reported during an emergency conference call. I can track her location in real time while she's logged into the system. Where is she? Your office. She's using your company's internet connection to access Amanda's email account at 11:30 at night. Marcus contacted his law enforcement contacts while Kelly documented Jennifer's unauthorized access to external systems. We finally had real-time evidence of Jennifer committing federal computer crimes from our office. But the most devastating revelation was still to come. Kelly's monitoring had detected Jennifer accessing multiple client email accounts using a sophisticated credential harvesting program. She wasn't just targeting Amanda, she was systematically stealing login information for every client in our database. She's downloading client contact lists, financial information, marketing strategies, and confidential business plans, Kelly reported. This isn't just about destroying your marriage. She's stealing your entire client base to start her own competing business. The criminal enterprise was larger and more ambitious than any of us had imagined. Jennifer wasn't just a con artist targeting relationships. She was conducting corporate espionage on a scale that threatened the existence of every business she touched. As we prepared to spring the trap that would expose Jennifer's crimes, I realized that my personal vindication was just the beginning. We were about to uncover a fraud network that had probably destroyed dozens of families and businesses across the Midwest. Jennifer had made the mistake of targeting someone who refused to accept defeat quietly. She was about to discover that some victims fight back with everything they have, and her criminal career was about to come to a very public and permanent end. The next phase of our investigation would either save my marriage and business or provide the evidence needed to ensure Jennifer faced justice for every life she'd destroyed. Either way, the truth was finally going to come out. Kelly's monitoring system provided a front-row seat to Jennifer's criminal activities over the following week. Every night after Sarah left the office, Jennifer returned to continue her systematic theft of client information and destruction of evidence. The digital forensics painted a picture of criminal sophistication that went far beyond simple relationship manipulation. She's using military-grade encryption software to communicate with her associates, Kelly reported during our daily briefing. The text messages and emails are automatically deleted after being read, and she's routing everything through international proxy servers to hide her location. Marcus had been coordinating with federal investigators who were building cases against Jennifer's network in multiple states. The scope of their criminal enterprise was staggering. They had targeted over 40 small businesses in the past 3 years, stealing an estimated $2 million while destroying countless relationships and partnerships. Jennifer is what law enforcement calls a relationship assassin, Marcus explained. She specializes in identifying and exploiting trust vulnerabilities in family businesses and romantic partnerships. Her success rate is nearly 100% because victims rarely realize they're being manipulated until it's too late to prevent the damage. The technical evidence Kelly had gathered proved Jennifer's guilt beyond any reasonable doubt, but we still needed to catch her in an act that would trigger immediate criminal charges. The opportunity came when Kelly detected Jennifer attempting to transfer funds from our business accounts to offshore entities controlled by her criminal network. She's moving money right now, Kelly announced during a midnight conference call. $25,000 from your operating account to a bank in the Cayman Islands. Can you stop the transfer? Already done. I've also documented the entire transaction for law enforcement. This is wire fraud, money laundering, and theft from a federally regulated business account. She's looking at serious federal charges. But Jennifer's most devastating betrayal was still unfolding in real time. Kelly's monitoring revealed that Jennifer had been secretly recording her conversations with Sarah, editing them to create fake evidence of my supposed admissions of guilt and preparing to release them as the final proof of my infidelity and embezzlement. The recordings are sophisticated deep fakes, Kelly explained. She used voice cloning software to create conversations where Bud supposedly confesses to cheating on Sarah and stealing money from the business. If she releases these, they'll destroy any chance of reconciliation even after we prove her other crimes. The psychological warfare was reaching its climax. Jennifer had anticipated that her deception might eventually be exposed, so she was preparing evidence so damaging that it would permanently destroy my reputation, regardless of legal vindication. Marcus and his law enforcement contacts decided to accelerate their timeline. We can't wait any longer. If she releases those fake recordings, the damage will be irreversible even after we prove they're fabricated. The plan was elegantly simple. Kelly would monitor Jennifer's computer access in real time while she was in our office documenting her crimes as they occurred. Meanwhile, Sarah would be presented with irrefutable evidence of Jennifer's true identity and criminal background at the moment Jennifer was caught red-handed stealing from our business accounts. The trap was set for Thursday evening. Marcus had confirmed that Jennifer planned to complete her financial theft and disappear over the weekend, probably moving to another state where her network had identified new targets. What none of us anticipated was that Sarah would discover Jennifer's crimes accidentally before our planned intervention. Thursday afternoon, Sarah returned to the office unexpectedly to retrieve documents she needed for a client presentation. Jennifer was supposed to be at Northwestern attending her final exams, but Sarah found her at my computer, transferring money to unauthorized accounts. "Jessica, what are you doing?" Sarah asked, standing in the doorway of my office. Jennifer's composure cracked for the first time since her manipulation began. "Sarah, I was just double-checking some account reconciliations that seemed problematic." "Why are you transferring money to accounts I've never seen before?" "These are the accounts Bud set up for his personal expenses. I was trying to recover some of the funds he embezzled before he could access them remotely." But Sarah had been managing our business finances for 6 years, and she knew every account we'd ever opened. The explanations Jennifer offered made no sense, and her nervous behavior was completely different from the confident intern who had presented such compelling evidence against me. "Jessica, I need you to step away from the computer and explain exactly what you're doing." Jennifer's mask finally slipped entirely. "Sarah, you need to trust me. Everything I've been doing is to protect you and the business from Bud's criminal activity. These financial transfers are necessary to preserve company assets. Show me the authorization for these transfers. Show me the documentation that explains why you're moving our money to accounts I don't recognize." Jennifer couldn't produce legitimate paperwork because no legitimate paperwork existed. Her criminal activity was finally being exposed in real time by the person she'd spent months manipulating. Sarah's phone call to me 20 minutes later was a barely coherent mixture of confusion, horror, and dawning realization that she'd been systematically deceived. "But I caught Jessica stealing money from our accounts, but that's not the worst part. I found fake identification documents in her desk. Her real name is Jennifer Walsh, not Jessica Evans." The relief I felt was overwhelmed by concern for Sarah's emotional state. She was discovering that someone she'd trusted completely had spent months lying to her, manipulating her emotions, and stealing from the business we'd built together. "Sarah, there's more you need to know about Jennifer. I've been working with a private investigator for the past 2 weeks, and what we've discovered is going to shock you." "More Bud. What else could there possibly be?" Jennifer is a professional con artist who's been targeting family businesses across the Midwest. She's wanted by law enforcement in multiple states for embezzlement, identity theft, and fraud. Everything she told you about me was fabricated." The silence on the phone lasted almost 30 seconds before Sarah's voice returned small and broken. "Bud, what have I done?" Sarah's discovery of Jennifer's real-time theft triggered a cascade of events that exposed the full scope of the criminal conspiracy against our family and business. Within hours of Sarah's phone call, Marcus had coordinated with federal agents to arrest Jennifer before she could destroy additional evidence or flee to another state. But Jennifer's final gambit was more desperate and vicious than any of us had anticipated. Cornered in our office with stolen money and unauthorized accounts and her fake identity exposed, Jennifer launched a last-ditch attempt to escape criminal charges by implicating Sarah as her willing accomplice. "Agent Morrison, I want to cooperate fully with your investigation," Jennifer told the FBI agent who arrived to question her. "But I need immunity in exchange for testimony about the real criminals in this case." Jennifer's story to law enforcement was a masterpiece of manipulation that painted Sarah as the mastermind behind an elaborate embezzlement scheme. According to Jennifer's fabricated account, Sarah had discovered my supposed affair months earlier and recruited her to help steal money from the business before I could access it during divorce proceedings. Schroer Richardson approached me about documenting her husband's inappropriate relationship with clients, Jennifer claimed. She asked me to gather evidence of his infidelity and help her move company assets to protected accounts before he could steal them. The fictional narrative Jennifer presented included forged documents suggesting Sarah had authorized the financial transfers, fake email exchanges discussing plans to frame me for crimes I didn't commit, and manipulated recordings that seemed to show Sarah acknowledging the conspiracy. Mrs. Richardson was terrified that her husband would destroy their business and leave her with nothing, Jennifer continued. She asked me to help protect company assets and gather evidence for divorce proceedings. I thought I was helping a victim of domestic financial abuse. Agent Morrison was experienced enough to recognize potential deception, but Jennifer's story was detailed and supported by fabricated evidence that required expert analysis to debunk. The investigation that should have immediately cleared my name and exposed Jennifer's crimes suddenly became a complex examination of all three parties' potential criminal liability. Sarah was devastated by Jennifer's accusations. "She's claiming I hired her to frame my own husband for crimes he didn't commit. How is that possible when I believed every lie she told me?" Marcus worked frantically with Kelly to provide technical evidence that would destroy Jennifer's credibility before the false accusations gained traction with law enforcement. The digital forensics were clear. Every piece of evidence Jennifer presented to implicate Sarah had been created after her arrest using the same sophisticated editing software she'd used to fabricate proof of my supposed infidelity. Jennifer made a critical error, Kelly explained to Agent Morrison. She created the fake documents and recordings after being taken into custody using her phone call privileges to access her manipulation software. The timestamps prove these materials didn't exist before her arrest. But the most damning evidence came from Jennifer's own communications with her criminal network. Kelly's monitoring had captured messages discussing plans to burn everything down if Jennifer's cover was blown, including strategies for implicating victims in her crimes to muddy the legal waters. "She's done this before," Marcus reported. In Chicago, she tried to frame the restaurant owner's wife as a willing participant in embezzlement. In Milwaukee, she claimed the contractor's business partner had hired her to steal financial information. It's standard operating procedure when her cons are exposed. The breakthrough came when federal agents arrested two of Jennifer's associates in coordinated raids across Illinois and Wisconsin. Under pressure, they revealed details about the network's operations and confirmed that Jennifer specialized in destroying family businesses by manipulating relationship dynamics. Jennifer Walsh is one of the most sophisticated relationship manipulators we've ever encountered, Agent Morrison explained to Sarah and me during a joint debriefing. Her psychological profiles of victims are accurate enough to predict exactly which pressure points will cause maximum damage to personal and professional relationships. The evidence against Jennifer was overwhelming: identity theft, wire fraud, money laundering, computer crimes, and conspiracy to commit additional federal offenses. Her criminal network had been operating for over 5 years, targeting successful family businesses and stealing millions of dollars while destroying dozens of marriages and partnerships. But the personal damage Jennifer had inflicted couldn't be repaired through criminal prosecution alone. Sarah's trust in her own judgment had been shattered, and her guilt over believing Jennifer's lies was consuming her emotionally. "I chose to believe a criminal over my own husband," Sarah said during one of our first conversations after Jennifer's arrest. "I threw you out of our home and our business based on fabricated evidence from someone who was actively stealing from us." The legal case against Jennifer provided vindication and justice, but it couldn't restore the foundation of trust that her manipulation had destroyed. Sarah's betrayal of our marriage had been based on lies, but her willingness to believe those lies without giving me a chance to defend myself revealed deeper problems in our relationship that preceded Jennifer's arrival. The 3 weeks Sarah had given me to reflect on my behavior had become 3 weeks of investigating criminal fraud and building a case that would send Jennifer to federal prison. Instead of returning home with apologies and promises to change, I was coming back with evidence that my wife had been systematically manipulated by a professional con artist. The question that remained was whether our marriage could survive not just Jennifer's deception, but the painful realization that we'd been vulnerable to her manipulation because of existing cracks in our foundation of trust and communication. Jennifer's arrest provided justice and closure for her crimes, but it marked the beginning of a much more difficult process of deciding whether Sarah and I could rebuild something stronger from the wreckage of everything we'd thought we knew about our relationship. 3 days after Jennifer's arrest, Sarah appeared at Danny's apartment with red-rimmed eyes and a folder containing legal documents. She looked like someone who hadn't slept in weeks, carrying the weight of guilt and betrayal that went beyond anything Jennifer had done to us. "But I know I have no right to ask for your forgiveness." Sarah began standing in Danny's living room like a defendant awaiting judgment. "What I did to you, to us, to everything we built together was unforgivable. I chose to believe lies over the man I've loved for 8 years. I'd been preparing for this conversation since Jennifer's crimes were exposed, but actually facing Sarah's broken expression was more difficult than I'd anticipated. The anger I'd felt during my exile had been replaced by a complex mixture of relief, sadness, and uncertainty about what our future might hold. "Sarah, you were manipulated by a professional criminal who's destroyed dozens of other relationships using the same tactics. Jennifer studied us for months, identified our vulnerabilities, and exploited them with surgical precision." That's an explanation, not an excuse. "A stranger convinced me that my husband was a criminal and an adulterer, and I didn't even give you a chance to defend yourself. I violated every principle of trust and partnership that marriage is supposed to represent." Sarah opened her folder and placed 3 sets of documents on Danny's coffee table. "I've prepared papers that give you everything. Full ownership of the business, our house, all our joint assets. I'll take responsibility for any debts or legal issues related to Jennifer's crimes, and I've filed for divorce to free you from any further damage I might cause." Looking at the legal documents that would dissolve our marriage and business partnership, I felt a profound sadness about how completely Jennifer's manipulation had destroyed our life together. But I also felt something unexpected clarity about what I actually wanted from our future. "Sarah, I don't want a divorce based on guilt or what you think you owe me for Jennifer's crimes. If we're going to end our marriage, it should be because we honestly can't rebuild trust and partnership, not because you're punishing yourself for being victimized by a con artist. How could you possibly trust me again? How could you forgive me for believing the worst about you without even asking for your side of the story? Because forgiveness isn't about what you deserve. It's about what I choose to do with my pain and anger. Jennifer wanted to destroy our marriage, and letting her manipulation have permanent power over us would mean she succeeded even from prison." I sat beside Sarah on the couch and took her hands, which were shaking with emotional exhaustion. "But forgiveness doesn't mean pretending this didn't happen or going back to the way things were before. If we're going to rebuild our marriage, it has to be on completely different foundations. What kind of foundations use us? I'd spent 3 weeks thinking about this exact question while Marcus investigated Jennifer's crimes. Transparency about our vulnerability systems for making major decisions together, and protocols for handling conflicts that prevent either of us from making unilateral choices about our relationship. Sarah listened as I outlined the framework I'd developed for rebuilding trust between partners who'd experienced betrayal. The plan included individual counseling for both of us, couples therapy, with a specialist in rebuilding relationships after infidelity or abuse, and a complete restructuring of our business partnership with clear boundaries and shared decision-making processes. "I want to try rebuilding what we had," Sarah said after reviewing my proposal. "But I understand if you can't forgive what I did or trust me with your future." "I can forgive you, Sarah. The question is whether you can forgive yourself and do the work necessary to become someone who won't be vulnerable to this kind of manipulation in the future." The conversation that followed was the most honest discussion we'd ever had about our relationship patterns, individual insecurities, and the ways we'd taken each other for granted during 8 years of marriage. Jennifer's manipulation had been successful because she'd identified real weaknesses in our communication and trust that we'd never acknowledged or addressed. "We were so focused on building our business that we stopped building our marriage," Sarah admitted. "I was working 70-hour weeks and making major decisions without consulting you. When Jennifer pointed out problems in our relationship, part of me already knew they were true. And I was so comfortable with our success that I stopped paying attention to warning signs about Jennifer or your emotional needs. I dismissed your concerns about our relationship dynamics because addressing them would have required difficult conversations I was avoiding." The rebuilding process we embarked on was more challenging than either of us had anticipated. Individual therapy helped us understand our personal vulnerabilities to manipulation and betrayal. Couples counseling provided tools for rebuilding trust and communication. But the most important changes were practical restructurings of our daily life and business operations. We sold our damage marketing consultancy to Amanda Porter's firm, using the proceeds to eliminate debt and start fresh with a clean slate. Amanda had been so impressed with how we'd handled Jennifer's crimes that she offered us consulting positions with her company, allowing us to rebuild our professional reputation while learning new approaches to client relationship management. 6 months after Jennifer's arrest, Sarah and I launched a new business specializing in helping family businesses implement security protocols and communication systems that prevent relationship manipulation and fraud. Our first-hand experience with professional con artists provided unique insights that other consultants couldn't offer. Jennifer received a federal sentence of 8 years in prison as part of a plea agreement that helped authorities dismantle her entire criminal network. 12 associates across 6 states were arrested and charged with related crimes. The investigation recovered over $1 million in stolen funds and prevented estimated future losses of several million more. But the most meaningful outcome wasn't Jennifer's punishment or our financial recovery. It was the gradual rebuilding of trust between Sarah and me, based on honest acknowledgement of our individual failures and shared commitment to creating something stronger than what we'd lost. "I learned that forgiveness isn't a feeling," I told Sarah during one of our counseling sessions 9 months after Jennifer's arrest. "It's a choice you make every day to build something better from the wreckage of what was destroyed." "And I learned that trust isn't just believing in someone's good intentions," Sarah replied. "It's building systems and communication patterns that make betrayal impossible, even when people make mistakes or face manipulation." Today, 2 years after Jennifer's crimes nearly destroyed our marriage, Sarah and I have built a stronger partnership than we ever had before. Her manipulation entered our lives. We've helped 17 other families recover from similar cons, prevented countless additional victims through our security consulting, and developed a marriage based on transparent communication rather than comfortable assumptions. The experience taught us that betrayal can either destroy relationships or provide opportunities to rebuild them on stronger foundations. The choice between those outcomes depends not on the severity of the original damage, but on the willingness of both parties to do the difficult work of honest self-examination and systematic change. Jennifer's manipulation was intended to replace me in Sarah's life and steal everything we'd built together. Instead, her crimes forced us to examine our relationship honestly and build something much stronger than what she'd tried to destroy. Sometimes the worst things that happen to us create opportunities for the best things we never knew were possible. Have you ever experienced betrayal in your personal or professional life that forced you to rebuild trust from the ground up? What strategies did you use to determine whether relationships could be salvaged or needed to end? I'd love to hear about your experiences with overcoming deception and manipulation in the comments below. If this story resonated with you or helped you think differently about forgiveness and rebuilding trust, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more real-life stories about overcoming betrayal and injustice. Sharing this video with friends who might benefit from hearing about recovery and resilience would mean the world to me. Thank you for listening to my story and joining me on this journey from devastation to healing. Remember that no matter how hopeless betrayal might feel in the moment, there's always a path forward for people who are willing to fight for truth and rebuild trust on stronger foundations. Until next time, stay strong and never stop fighting for the relationships and values that matter most to you. See you.